Mask of a Diva, a Stan Kraychik mystery, Book 4, 1994. Author, Grant Michaels. Publisher, St. Martin's Press, New York. Author, Eric Aust. For all the divas, operatic and otherwise. Chapter 4. The Jitney, as Daphne had called it, turned out to be a sleek, air-conditioned minivan. Maurizio drove fast, which didn't surprise me, but also with intense focus, which did. His driving was the polar opposite of Daphne's, whose attention wandered constantly from the road in front of her. In fact, Maurizio barely glanced my way at all, which gave me plenty of time to enjoy his profile. Sensual lips, straight nose, meaty chin, strong brow, and those long lashes soft as sable. Before leaving me off at the stage door to the opera house, Maurizio gave me a riding tour around the Performing Arts Center. It was an old mill complex that had been completely gutted and now comprised 4 huge brick buildings that interconnected around an open quadrangle. Formerly the mill's truck yard, the entrance to the complex was an archway built into one of the buildings. The main structures facing the quadrangle were the opera house, a concert hall, a theater, and a building of studios and residences for visiting artists. The quadrangle had been landscaped and terraced to provide pleasant views for the clientele of the ground floor businesses, among which were an Epicurean restaurant, a smart cafe, and various posh ateliers. All this was left to test this wild experiment, and Hot Lux was a successful opening season. At the opera house, I opened the stage door and immediately encountered the tiny sounds of a chorus and piano coming over the house PA system. Rehearsal was obviously in progress. I asked the security guard in his glass booth for directions to the wig room. He told me the way, the first leg of which was a long stairway going down. Once in the subterranean world, I passed through a hallway lined with many small rooms. Through the closed doors, I heard the sounds of singers vocalizing. Some were singing actual music, but most were singing scales or other warm-up exercises, a lot of which resembled barnyard noises more than operatic grandeur. I guess it's true that the best vocal technique is purely natural. Unlike the seaside quietude of Daphne's mansion, the bowels of the opera house were alive and seething with music. It seemed the entire cast was there preparing to work. Everyone except the 2 principal singers, Madama Ostinata and Bruce David, who at the moment were probably lunching at Daphne's gazebo. The wig room was at the far end of a corridor. I went through the open door, and before I could get my bearings, a voice barked at me. Yes. I looked around, but my view was blocked by row upon row of industrial shelving filled with dummies and wigs. I couldn't see the man who'd already seen me. I'm looking for a Dan Carafaleo, I said into the air. I'm Daniel, said the haughty voice, still concealed among the rows and racks of wigs. Where are you? I said. Who are you? He said back. Stan Kraychik. I heard him struggle to his feet, then he came out from behind one of the high shelving units. Now, I'll admit to having a small weight problem, 15 or so pounds that linger around my rump and midriff, but this guy had let himself go to slop. Even his clothes were repulsive. An oversized Hawaiian print shirt hung outside some ratty plaid Bermuda shorts, and filthy canvas sneakers showed his fat, dirty toes poking through holes on top. First rule, he said, when you work for me, you show up on time. Bad start. I meant to call, I began, then caught myself. Was I about to grovel? I continued more assertively. I was lunching with Miss Davenport. Sure you were. And I'm Anne of Romania. It's Marie, doll, not Anne. If you're going to quote Dorothy Parker, do it right. This isn't a literary contest, he snapped. This is opera, and you're working for me. His feral eyes glowed within the doughy flesh of his face. I requested 2 assistants for this production, but the costume designer determined that I needed only 1. And now it looks as though all they could find was some beauty school dropout to help me. I have clients from the social register, I said. I don't care. I don't care what you claim you've done before this. And I don't care what you thought you'd be doing here. But this is your job description while you're in this opera house and working for me. Are you ready? Would I ever be? Daniel said. You will carry the hairpieces for me. He paused, as if so impart weight to the words, then went on. I have spent the last 8 months creating these works in my New York studio. I then had to arrange their transport here at great expense. And now I will style them and I will dress them. And you, he said the word like it was a disease, you will carry them. That is your sole function here. Your only job. You never touch a hair, please. If that's not clear, I'll say it another way. Keep your hands off the wigs. I think I understand, Daniel, but how am I supposed to carry them if I can't touch them? He shot me a venomous glance. They are stored on dummies. You shall know that. Who hired you anyway? I was referred by a client, I said, struggling to be cool. Daniel said, if this was New York, you'd be out of work. This was New York, I thought. You'd be in a cage. He said, they're just finishing the first scene of Act 1 upstairs. I'm going to have a few words with the chorus. Then we start the first fitting down here. Do you think you can handle that? I'm at your service, I said, but I couldn't help wondering, once again, did that young woman throw herself in front of a train because she was missing this? I followed him upstairs, but instead of going backstage with him, I wasn't sure I wanted to consecrate our association. I found a door that led out into the house auditorium, where the audience would eventually be. The stage was full of singers, including some of the soloists. A piano accompanied them, all from a front corner of the stage. Finally, with the live music and the singers on stage, everything seemed fine again, as though the sun had come out and all the bad manners I'd encountered so far. The insanity of Jonathan Byers, the noblesse oblige of Madame Astanata, and the bitchiness of Daniel Carafalio. All of it vanished in the presence of Verdi's music. Despite the petty power struggles that were endemic to an opera company, there was a point to it all: the glorious music. Those very sounds roused me to the point where I didn't even care if I lost my charge of slavery to the keeper of the wigs. Daphne had already invited me to stay with her on the estate. Why not just attend rehearsals every day and enjoy myself? I'd always wanted to learn about opera, and what better way than to watch a production in progress? The chorus had just finished singing, and already my life was back on course. A husky young woman dressed in jeans and a plaid flannel shirt came onto the stage. She sported a boyish brush cut. "Break!" she barked. 20 minutes! The singers were about to disperse when Daniel Carafalio waddled out from the opposite side of the stage in his grotesque clothes. He clapped his hands loudly and shouted, "People! People! Don't leave yet! I want your attention here!" The chorus stopped while Dumpy Daniel addressed them all. "I'm the wig master." That's the word he used. Master. Daniel continued. "You are all scheduled for fitting later on after this rehearsal session. I have just 2 simple rules for you, which should be easy enough even for chorus singers." That was apparently another term for disease in his vocabulary. Number one, he said, you don't open your mouth to me. And number two, you never touch your hairpiece. Is that clear? 1, 2. Very simple. Shut up and don't touch. Don't make me nail a sign on your skull to remind you. Dead quiet followed. Good. See you all after rehearsal. He stalked off the stage, and immediately the chorus members were murmuring among themselves. Then I heard a familiar voice shout from the back of the hall. Bloody fool! It was Jonathan Bayers. He came forward into the light and addressed the chorus from the rail of the orchestra pit. You listen to me now, all of you. Pay no attention to that pathetic little grub. You just tend to your blocking, if you can remember any of it. Once you've got that all straight, you can sing that idiot's wigs off your bleeding head for all I care. It was going to be some 2 weeks. During the break, I wandered into the main lobby of the Opera House. There was an exhibit out there about the history of the Performance Center, how it had originally been a woolen mill owned by Chester Wattis in the late 1800s. Wattis had created the famous Abigail, brand sweaters named after his wife. So dear old Daphne, in spite of her youth in Santa Barbara and her stellar career and her 2 marriages, had come from Yankee stock after all. I went back downstairs to help Daniel set things up for the fitting session that afternoon, and I was promptly berated. Where have you been, and are you here to work or to fuck around? Look, I said, I'm sorry we got off on the wrong foot. I thought maybe you'd gone for tea with Miss Davenport. You and the wigs have preempted all my prior engagements. It's too bad you showed up at all, he said. I need professional help. About 10 years, doll. Thus began an afternoon of enforced labor, carrying a wig for her bitter highness. Later on, I did try to lighten up the chore and banter with some of the singers, but was quickly reminded by Daniel to shut the fuck up. Finally, I gave the fuck up and claimed I had a headache. I called the estate and asked Parker to send Marazio to come and get me. When he arrived in the minivan, I was pleased to find that the sight and the scent of him, like the sounds of Verdi's music, had restorative powers. But that didn't mean I had to fool around, did it? Hell, before meeting my lover, I'd spent eons alone, languishing without so much of the trick. Surely I could wait 2 short weeks to be with him again, and just in time my new summer mantra came to me. Monogamy, monogamy, monogamy. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold: to offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides, and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.